John Krasinski with The Athletic. Chris, Tim was just up here saying that to be a successful season, it's about time for this team to win a playoff series. Just what do you think about that barometer and the attainability of something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly our goal is to advance in the playoffs. We've been there twice now. So, I think, getting there is the first step. Obviously, being able to navigate through the playoffs, something that we feel like we should be able to do if we, are able to build the right habits through the rest of the season.
What do you think has to happen the most, I guess, to put you guys in the right position to do that?
Well, I mean, we still got some things to figure out. We got to find a chemistry here in camp, find an identity. We were never really able to find an identity last year. We had to we're a bit of a chameleon, kind of changing all the time just to survive the season or whatever was thrown our way. But yeah, we got to have a great camp and look for a good start. So.
Kind of Chris Hine from the Star Tribune. Kind of along those lines, with having a good training camp, building the chemistry. You had a lot of guys who played internationally this summer. You have a trip to Abu Dhabi coming up here.
Mm-hmm.
Are you concerned at all about maybe tired legs, availability, kind of even load management with all this kind of travel these guys have been doing the last 6 weeks or so?
Not really. The World Cup finished 3 weeks ago. Guys have been in really good shape, continuing work here in the building. Nobody came back with any unnecessary bumps and bruises. The Abu Dhabi trip is opportunity to really come together as a team. There's, the way our preseason in general maps out, there's a lot of really good blocks of practice time. So I like that. So no, not really concerned.
Tim and you kind of have harped on the fact that this team needs to be more mature. What specific areas do you think you need to make the biggest leaps in that area, and how can you, from your seat, affect that? Well,
certainly, leading the league in technicals is not something we're proud of. That's got to change. We were, I think, 7-13 against the bottom 6 teams in the league last year. So it's a little bit immature in our approach, readiness, stuff like that. Mostly those things.
Hey, Chris, Jamal Collier from ESPN. Talk specifically about, Carl and Rudy and their pairing together. Obviously, the injury to Cat last year kind of probably, stunted some of that development. But kind of what things are you looking forward to get those guys working on the same page during this preseason? How can you sort of help expedite that going into the year?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do a lot of work with those guys together, in player development, small group work for sure. I think through the season last year, Ant and Rudy had a better understanding. It's not the finished product by any stretch of the imagination, but you felt it getting better and better. I think key for us is to recapture the chemistry that Ant and Cat have always had, and that's I'm not overly concerned about that. But because we played in a very different rhythm for most of the season, when Carl came back, that 2-man game between him and Ant wasn't as prevalent as it needs to be or should be. So reestablishing that is going to be key for us to start the season.
Chris, Michael Rand from the Star Tribune. You said you're still looking for an identity. Do you have in mind, what's this team's best identity, if you can find it?
I think we should be, defensively led. We have a lot of individual defenders. Certainly, Rudy, the back line. Offensively, I think we have to be way more mindful of our spacing and figure out how we can best, kind of utilize Cat in that way. But we just, we need to be kind of a little bit tougher, more 50-50 balls. I don't think we got enough of that last year. Just get a little bit grittier, and play a little bit bigger like a big team should. Pound the glass, both ends. Be a little bit more physical in the paint.
Chris, Dave Campbell with AP. What's the next step for Ant defensively?
Defensively, I think it's consistency for one. Not waiting for these high leverage moments to really dig in and guard. Certainly has to be better in transition. He's not always consistent getting back in transition in the way that we need him to. And then all of our perimeter players have to rebound at a much higher level than they have been. So.
Chris Chase Frederick with the Pioneer Press. Consistency kind of falls on everyone, but it seemed like Ant and Jaden were certainly like rise to the occasion type players.
Yeah.
Is them bringing it on a nightly basis something that will really help a team take a step in that regard?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, by nature, young players tend to be inconsistent. And, both those guys have shown the willingness and the ability and to play in big moments, But it's sometimes with the nights when you're not feeling it 100%, or you're not playing on national TV, or you're not playing a marquee matchup. Those are the teams and those are the games that you got to go in and find a way to win, and that's all about your habits and your approach. So.
Larry Fitzgerald, National Programming Network. Coach, can you describe your philosophy and your approach to your offensive mindset?
Yeah, I think in general, we always like to play fast, but we may not have the fastest team right now. We always like to play a little bit freer, but heading into this season, I can see us with a little bit more structure. Spacing around the two bigs is going to be paramount. The rest of it I don't see changing. We want to share the ball, make the right play. We've always been a movement team. I want to maintain that. Got to get back on the offensive glass. We punted offensive rebounding last year to try to shore up our transition defense, but this year I think we got to be able to do both. The best teams do. I think offensively we kind of dipped last year in a lot of categories that are correctable. So offensive efficiency, we're going to need an uptick there. So.
Dane Moore, Coach, you've talked about wanting to generate more turnovers and rebound better. How do you do both of those things kind of simultaneously?
Well, I mean, if we can generate a turnover every time down, they don't get to shoot the ball, so we don't have to worry about rebounding. So, it's literally about your level of aggressiveness. To me, they're not related in the way that maybe you're asking. I think, when you looked at some of the metrics for us last year, like people out-rebounded us on long rebounds more than any other team in the league. Again, that has to do with perimeters. The level of aggressiveness on the ball and trying to close down spaces is really what forces turnovers, and we were actually pretty good at that last year. The rebounding piece is on everybody. So, yeah, I think you can do them both at the same time. So.
And then with the bench, you talk about the identity. That seemed to be the thing that was changing constantly last year, was the bench as injuries and stuff happened. How much can a kind of shored up bench group help establish that identity and give you more consistency?
Well, I think, we have the depth to be able to, to have a really solid second unit with its own identity. What that looks like right now, I'm not 100% sure. I could see obviously Kyle being key to that, but being able to play a multitude of roles. Cat also being, key to that as he moves from the starting forward to the backup five, and how we fill out around that, we'll figure out over the next month.
Chris Joe Schmidt, Channel 5. You mentioned the record against bottom-feeding teams. What can you do as a coach to change that? I mean, are you going to do anything differently than you did last year when you approached those games?
Well, you first have to bring it to the attention of the team, keep reminding them. That's first and foremost. We'll look at all sort of ways to be better prepared. We're going to talk about it from day one. Maybe how we prepare, whether some teams are shoot-around teams, some teams don't like shoot-around. Every team has its own personality, so I'm not really sure what we can draw upon last year will be unique to this year. We'll have to figure that out. But.
Kyle Tighe, the depth last year was obviously awesome for a coach, but this year team's even deeper. But does it also present a challenge for some of the younger guys, like maybe a Leonard Miller or a Josh Minot that might not start the season in rotation? And how do you keep them kind of engaged and ready to play?
I mean, our coaches do an amazing job keeping all those guys engaged and ready. It will be tough for those guys to see, minutes. That's just normal in a young team. For a young player and an experienced team. But they have a lot to learn. So their plate should be full, just trying to learn the league, figure out who they are as the players, learn our system, and then staying ready for their opportunity. Because in the league, your opportunity always comes. It always comes.
Hey, Chris, Max Fuller here from KFAN. When Nas, Carl, and Rudy were all healthy last season, we kind of saw two of them out of the three being in the rotation at all times. And when Nas got re-signed, you even said something about having all three of them on the floor at the same time. So what does that specific rotation look like between those three?
Well, I mean, I could see Nas playing heavy minutes at the 4, which the knock-on effect for that is going to be Kyle heavy minutes at the 3. The good thing about that is, right before Nas got hurt, I thought he really found his kind of groove at the 4, really figured out what that looked like. Now, defensively, he's got to get better and better there, and we're going to have to help him with some schemes and stuff like that. But, so, yeah, I think, this is all about trying to get your best players on the floor, and he's clearly in our top 8 players. So.
Chris, do you envision, especially with like the starting unit, punting more on like the free-flowing offense, or is that something where you would like to see players continue to evolve and learn how to do that?
I think honestly, like, today's game is pretty free-flowing all the way around. I don't think we're going to punt on it. We still want to give those guys freedom. I just think players are at their best when they have that. It's just the structure and the early concepts that allow them to get to those places, So,
Chris, Darren Wolfson from Channel 5. Corliss Williamson, what does that addition do to help you guys?
Yeah, I'm really excited about bringing Corliss on staff. Just, another guy who's been in the league, kind of done it all. NCAA champion, NBA champion, 6th man of the year. Played with toughness. There's no nonsense. And I think he's a guy that will really relate well to kind of the top of the roster, being able to kind of message them in the right way as the season goes along. Listen, that's I've probably made that comment more in jest than I did, and but you never know, right? You never know. So it's not at the forefront of my teacher plan going into the season. So, but we better be good at zone. That's all I'll say. Thanks. Appreciate it.